Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another review featuring me, Gitsilius. This time, I'll be talking about an interesting dungeon crawler called Silent Hope. Silent Hope has been developed by Marvelous Entertainment and published by Xseed, Marvelous USA, and Marvelous. So, thank you guys for Xseed for providing me a copy so I can talk about this game. And you guys, if you like what I'm saying, you like what you're seeing, be sure to sub to the channel. It really helps us grow, and you can also check out the YouTube channel for more interesting content or review games that I like to play or get a hand on. So, first thing I want to talk about is Silent Hope. What is this game? This game is a kind of an old school top down dungeon crawler where you can play with 7+ classes. All of them have unique abilities and plays they can do, and we can talk about how that works in the gameplay, etc., etc. But the first thing that always comes from review is I think about how the game look and what the aesthetic is going. So this game looks beautiful. It reminds me of Secret of Mana and elements of Yeast Origins. It looks really cool. It's very colorful. I love the chibi art. It's really, really well done. It's kind of cute, straight to the point. The floors of the dungeon each have their own unique look, from the second floor, third floor, fourth floor, etc. No spoilers about it. And all the monsters do look unique on top of each other. There's not a lot where I would see models like kind of like I would say they did a lot of diversification of the enemies, how they look, and the aesthetic looks really well, especially how the characters look and how they motif themselves. So I give it a pretty good right there. If I had to grade the graphic aesthetics on its own core, I have to give it a solid 4. It's better than average, it's consistent, and each character and enemies do have their unique options where they look good. So I'll leave that there. So the next thing I usually talk about in reviews is generally how the game sounds, from its audio, music design, and sound effects. And first things first, it has English and Japanese voice acting. You can switch it in the menus, so that's always a banger. Generally, it's a banger because if you somehow don't like English VA, you can switch to Japanese and vice versa. And the English VA for the main character who can mostly talk, the princess, giving you the lowdown what's happening in the world in the abyss and her father, the king. I'll talk more about that in the gameplay. She's very encouraging, to be a little bit annoying at times because sometimes you're doing nothing, she just goes on and on and on and on and on. Dream like okay before I get sued. So, but you get it. But other than that, the voices sound good. The music is probably the strong point of the game. The music has a chill and lo-fi vibe. Essentially, I just call it chill beats to grind enemies to. It's very atmospheric. It's very solid. The boss music is a bit, but the general music of the game just a very comfy vibe, and it makes me feel really cool playing this game. And with that, I generally have to give us another 4 across the board. I mean, we got 2 4s in it, man. We're hitting hard today. And now it's time to the meat and potatoes of a Silent Hill. Let's talk about the gameplay. So, the game itself is an old school dungeon crawl. As I mentioned, similar to Secret of Mana and Yeast Origins. You have 7 playable classes, each have their own abilities, well, 3 abilities, and a dodge. These abilities don't activate off MP or mana. They generally activate off just cooldown. So each character has a certain combo you want to do. A perfect example would be the Sage when you use their Dark Hole and then hit him with the AoE bomb. The Warrior wants to use the Shout ability and then use the baseball swing to hit a group of enemies or the tackle. So it's kind of interesting in that regard. Essentially, the game does not punish you for playing multiple classes. You're not locked in. If you play the Sage, you don't like them, you can go to the Archer. Even like that, you could play the Wanderer. Just pick a class, find a couple of classes you like, and just pick what you play. You can switch them by going to the crystals in the dungeon and every floor. If you find it, you can switch characters, and switching characters offer a bonus. By switching from, I believe, a warrior to another class, you'll gain 30% bonus. So the game rewards you for trying to level up multiple characters or switching often, getting the buffs that allow you to beat the enemies faster, which is really good. Now, one thing about this game when it comes to combat, the combat in this game, well, maybe a slight repetitive, but similar to other beat 'em ups or dungeon RPG games, the enemies do not go down if you hit them with your one, one, two, three combo, which is essentially your AAA, or because I play this on Xbox pad, or I would be XXX for PlayStation users, or BBB for the bottom, the keypad button for the Switch users. So your triple combo, your basic string, does not have hit stun. What I mean is that in certain games, you hit an enemy a certain amount of times, they go invincible or they stop hitting you. No, the enemies are still going to do their attack at the end of the day. Certain moves you have the ability to stop the enemy in their tracks, which is your cooldown abilities, your special spells and abilities. Those will do it, but your 1, 2, 3 doesn't do it. So get used to dodging and try to kind of map out your combos and damage you could wig out. What makes the game even interesting is that every character, if you get them to level 15, you go back to the princess. She will grant you a second class. One class, it's an easy unlock. Obviously, a second unlock comes when you beat a certain boss in the game. No spoilers, but that's generally how that works. So there is multiple diversity, and hey, if you don't like a certain skill from a certain class, you can just still use the prior class's skill you unlocked and put that on your hotbar, so your three spells or buttons you put them for can be used for any combo you want. Mix and match. Figure out what works for you. I think it's a really cool way to look at it. Now, this game, as I would say, a dungeon crawler with essentially one dungeon but multiple floors, wants you to grind. You grind for material, gear, and everything else. Once you get that material and gear, you go back to the above world and you do your best ability to transform those items into other things, from alchemy, from turning to wood and products to wood to make weapons. You turn seeds into fruit so you can grow them. You can get some, I would say, when you level up consistently, you can get some fresh produce, like eggs, cheese, milk, and then cook that stuff to be buffs so you go back in the dungeon, become stronger. That loop is going to happen a lot. Now, each of the classes of the game specialize in doing something in a town. The farmer can farm, obviously. The sage can do, alchemy. The maid, ninja, is the, I guess, process the wooden lumber. The warrior is the blacksmith. The archer is the, I would say, farm life expert. And the fighter is the cook. Now, one thing is interesting that, well, what would happen? Well, gets I'm playing the fighter. What am I going to do if I can't cook the food? Or gets I'm playing the maid. What's going to happen to my I don't know stuff I'm processing? Don't worry about it. This is class called the Wanderer, who will always fill in the job of playing a class that's doing something. Easy peasy, 5-star mechanic. Don't have to worry about it. Chef's kiss. Love it. Now that's really really cool. So you don't have to worry about any of your processes to do it. And if you don't have patience, if you're willing to use your runes or other special premium item, wink wink, you can speed up the process and get it instantly done instantaneously. If you're really really impatient at getting those tomatoes to grow, you could drop some fat cash and the tomatoes will grow instantaneously. So that's the way to do that. That's really good. Now, the thing is that the gameplay, to talk more about it, is that it's all more on the simpler side. The bosses themselves don't have really hard patterns, and the enemies aren't particularly difficult per se. The enemies in this game, when you get further down into the dungeon, I want to say around floor 2 to floor 3, and maybe floor 4, you notice that enemies have little alignments on their head, like weaknesses based on type archetypes. Now, there are two weaknesses, like physical and elemental. I generally enjoy you can kind of ignore the physical type damage and just focus more on elementals by adding mage stones. Those stones you'll find down grinding the dungeon. You can add it to your gear. They'll give you element. Easy peasy. Don't worry about it. Boom. Now, gear grinding is kind of the point of the game. You could just do that and get whatever. So, get good at that. Now, I'm going to talk about the lore of the game. It's very basic. It's very straightforward. Oh, hey, the king of a great kingdom has left. He stuck in an abyss. The princess is sad. She summoned seven warriors of I would say seven warriors to come in the way and help save the kingdom. Go down the dungeon and punch everything you can. Straightforward. That's pretty much it. So that's the way you look at it. There's several playstyles in the game that kind of work for me. I think that all of them are kind of valid. They all work. No class feels kind of more or less stronger than each other. They kind of fit. Like I say, it's for to each their own. Pick your style you want. Be your own master. Everything works down that way. Now in the dungeons, we could talk more about um, how the dungeons, I would say dungeon things you'll find that works. Like, for example, you'll occasionally find a spirit animal that will heal you, which is great, and also restock your potions. So you get a limited amount of potions you can use per character. So once that's up, it's probably best to switch character because if you die in the dungeon, you lose. It's not game over. You go back to the top. You go back to the top overworld, and you lose a portion of your items. So tread carefully. Hence, switching out characters when you want to, and gaining those buffs could really help. Plus, the buffs you gain from eating those food groups you learn cooking early before you get in. Prepare, prepare, prepare. That's what this game really wants you to do. Another thing this game has to entice its difficulty. There are elements of like rogue-like elements in here where like certain floors will have random effects, such as finding a monster floors, where you're in a monster rush room, or you get ambushed. So that's kind of neat. You can do stuff like that. There are something called, I believe, the challenge room dungeons. You find them in certain floors. They're the purple portals. They're generally harder than the normal content that's in the game based on the dungeon. But if you beat those portals, you get some really cool gear and some really cool items that help you down the way. So for risk or for glory, you got to do that. Now, the only weakness of the game I really feel is like this game doesn't look well. This game screams to me multiplayer. This game's a single player experience, not whatsoever. I'm hoping if they ever make a Silent Hope 2, there is multiplayer. I would love to play this with my friends, and especially Sif Scott, just cruising these dungeons and just smashing through. It is a very old school, straightforward game. There's, I would say, enough death in the game to for combat, and what you're grinding for is okay. And the game isn't relatively that long. I was able to cruise through it very evenly under about 30 hours ish, but yet again, I was just smashing through like two or three characters and doing everything else. So it's a fun game for what it does, and for that, I really, really have to give this game a solid 4. It hits all the dungeon parts fun. The grinding part is not that bad. You can help yourself by getting more items. Everyone in town serves a purpose. You can essentially, in a way, make yourself kind of like OP when you get down there. The only issue is that if you're under leveled, it can be a bit rough. You're trying to level the characters a bit. And another roughness would be that knowing that, your certain attacks, like your 1, 2, 3, your basic combo string without using cooldowns, has kind of little to no hit stun that stops the enemies from attacking you. So you kind of want to dodge a bit or use your special abilities to CC, crowd control them, and get into that. But that's just the whole point of the game. Personally, my favorite characters in the game was the caster Sage, Archer, and Warrior. I like big weapons, big sandwich. That's kind of what I like. So those are my picks. But as many other characters and interesting playstyles in the game, you can definitely give it a try out. It's up to you. So with that out of the way, now let's talk about the final score of the game. I like the art. I like how it looks. It functions fine. I was able to play this. I had a PC copy, so it worked well on a computer. I was also able to play this on Steam Deck, so that's a really good thing. It works functionally well on Steam Deck. I would say on Steam Deck, the screen might be scrunched down a bit. You might have to change the settings, but that's, not really a big deal. The gameplay loop for me works pretty fine. It's not too wild. It doesn't really reinvent the wheel per se, but it adds a lot of core stuff that is really solid. Sometimes keeping it simple really works. And the music I generally like. I generally like the OSC in this game. It's just really a nice, chill OSC to listen to. It's just very vibing. Story wise, gameplay wise, story wise, it's pretty okay. It's not that deep, but it's pretty nice. And there's even, when you beat the game, a hard mode if you want to challenge yourself with more stuff, if you know what you're doing. So overall, I gotta give this game a solid 4 out of 5. This is a good old school DRPG. I would say outside DRPG dungeon crawler experience. If you like of the Mana series, if you like Yeast Origins or the older games like that, this might be up your alley. Give it a try. It definitely has a lot of things going for it that works, such as the multiple class system, the buffs of using it. The grind doesn't feel that bad. The game does challenge you of you knowing your elements would beat enemies, and generally some of the additional classes you unlock after level 15 or beating the boss is generally kind of cool. And each character playstyle, I didn't really find, even the farmer, who I thought was extremely, and I want to say awkward, because the farmer can summon butterflies and do a tackle attack and get a random buff when using their eat a food ability. Even they felt complete, and it was really kind of neat to see like this game balance and works across the board. Though the bosses aren't generally hard per se, and the, I would say, difficult, and the enemies, once you figure out the enemies have, like I said, hit stuns, that stun attacks don't break their hit stun. You don't like kind of stun lock them on their moves. Once you figure like what does what, it kind of feels like a smooth right across the board. There is a little learning curve to it. But if that out of the way, that's my opinion of A Silent Hope. Thank you, XE, for providing me a copy of this great game. And if you guys haven't already, be sure to wishlist the game if you can on Steam. The demo is out now. Give yourself a try. And the game comes out October 3rd, 2023. So, And the reason why I say the year is because I don't know when you're watching this video. So if it's out, it's out. If it's not, you can wait on it. And without the way, thank you guys so much for checking the video. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell up, be notified next we go live. Follow me on Twitter at GetSilius, and I'll see you guys in the next one.